Hey guys, I'm Jelly Arts, I'm Jelly and I'm back with another video, and today I am finally, after many requests, teaching you guys how to turn a photo into an anime. Now, if you are thinking to animate a background, you have to have that in mind as you're painting it in Photoshop, because the way you organize yourself while you're repainting the background is pretty much different to when you're, for example, making just a straight up still image. You have to layer everything properly and stuff like that. So I'll run you guys through the entire process on how to do all of that. All right, so after a lot of requests, I finally decided to make a tutorial on how to repaint a photo. Now, for a lot of people, this technique might be, I don't know, some sort of cheating or something, because a lot of people feel like it's not truly art to repaint a photo. Now, personally, I do not think that at all, okay? I feel like this is some sort of like concept art. I mean, it's pretty much just concept art. A lot of concept artists use a lot of photo manipulation and stuff like that, and to be honest with you, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If your opinion is different to mine, I guess this video is not for you. It's pretty much just concept art, you know? I mean, you're pretty much putting your concept into a photo. Now, you also have to keep in mind that this is a technique that a lot of animators do, repainting photos to save a lot of time, because if you constantly all of the time, you know, just straight up make the background straight from scratch all the time, it's gonna take a lot of time. So what a lot of animators do is they repaint a background to save time. The concept is already there, all of the layers and everything. All you have to do is kind of, you know, add your own spin to it and stuff like that. Now, I will advise you to have like a solid foundation. I do advise you to first start off by making background from scratch. That would allow you to get a concept of it and, you know, have a solid kind of like a foundation. So when you're getting into this, you have a better understanding of how background works. I mean, if you want to just jump into it, I'm like, okay. The problem that I think is that you only learn this skill, and when it comes to making, you know, like an original, totally original background, you won't be able to do that. So I feel like you should be able to control making, you know, background from memory and stuff like that, you know, off of references and that. I will link to some in the description. I've made some background from scratch. I'll link to some in the description. If you're interested in that, you can go check it out. Okay, so enough blabbing. Yes, I know it was pretty long, I'm sorry. So what I'm gonna do first, now this is a technique, I don't know if you guys know who Makoto Shikai is, but he's a pretty big anime director. Most of his backgrounds, he pretty much repaints a lot of photos. They turn out pretty good. I feel like that is a technique that I should be able to control if I want to get into the industry and stuff like that, which is why I've been doing a lot of background repaints. Now, the first thing that you want to do is to divide the landscape. Okay, so as you can see here, the first thing that I'm doing is selecting this what do you call it, this iron thingy. I don't know how to call it, but anyways, what you want to do is divide the landscape in layers, because that would help you animate it afterward. Now, it's a pretty good exercise. I mean, it's pretty advisable to organize your landscapes. Even if you're not making an animation, it's pretty good way to organize the entire thing. Yeah, this is the foreground type element. Okay, so I'm just selecting all of this. I mean, I'm using the lasso tool. If the lasso tool is not something that I mean, a lot of people prefer to use the ink tool or something, which helps them to be a little bit more precise with the pen tool. That was it. Which helps them to be a little bit more precise with the selecting. Personally, I am not super picky about the selecting, because I'm repainting it, and I'm not like super like it has to be super perfect. So I just use the lasso tool. It doesn't matter. I use the this one, polygonal lasso tool. I don't use the straight up lasso tool, because, you know, you have to be a little bit more, you have to have a very good pulse to select it. So I use the polygonal lasso tool. Anyways, yeah, okay, so this is the first kind of plane of the entire thing. So now what I normally do is I separate them in layers. What I normally use is Control-Shift-J. That is to save a cut. Okay, pretty much just cut that selected part and separated it to a separate layer. Now you can also use Control-J. Okay, that saves a copy, not a cut, of the selected part. Now it really depends on you what you prefer. Now I feel like if you save a copy, it's a little bit more messy, because you see the original in the back and it's a huge mess. So I just like to cut it, because it's a little bit more like straightforward if I just straight up cut it. That's the first thing. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm also going to cut the road, because I feel like that is something else that we need to divide. So I'm gonna cut the road again, Control-Shift-J. Wait, hold on, sorry. I'm in the wrong layer. So what you want to do is go to the original layer, Control Shift J, and as you're dividing each thing, what you want to do is just rename them, just so that everything is organized. And then this I'm gonna call iron thingy. We've got our road, our iron thingy. Now this, okay, I'm also gonna divide this vegetation. So I'm gonna take the lasso tool again, and I'm going to just straight up select all this. Now it doesn't really matter how you select it, because this and this is a separate layer. So yeah, I'm not super precise with that. So what you want to do is go to the original layer and then Control Shift J, and then we're gonna call this plants. Now the road is on top of the plants, so you want to do the plants should be, well, you know what, because the plants is on top of the road, so I'm gonna put the plants on top. Yeah, how it was before. Anyway, you'll understand what I mean later. I mean, it's just so that you have to have a concept in mind. What is on top, what is at the bottom. For example, as you can see here, the plant is at the top of the road, so you want to do is, you know, put the plant on top of the road. Stuff like that, little stuff like that is what I'm thinking as I'm dividing the layer. So the next layer that I'm going to divide is actually the just a straight up background. As I mentioned, I'm not super picky on how I usually select. I'm usually like, meh, I don't really care, to be honest. But if you want to be super precise about it, I mean, go ahead. But personally, I'm not super picky about it, because a little bit of imperfection is always I kind of seek it a little bit. So everything's not super, you know, super perfect. Yeah, this I'm just gonna continue it as if it's the mountains at the back, because I'm gonna repaint over that this tree right here. Now this can be a little bit tasking. It really depends on the background. If there's a lot of elements, I picked this background specifically because it's not too complicated. It's pretty simple. But for example, if you had like a whole city of, you know, of buildings and stuff like that, trying to organize it can be a little bit more tasking, and dividing the layers and trying to organize the entire thing can get you crazy. I actually like this element of this tree right here at the right, so I'm probably, oh, whoops, okay, you see, that is what you want to try to avoid, because that happens very often. Okay, so now I'm gonna have to start all over again. Gosh, you don't want to double click, because once you double click, then you've messed up. So there. Alright, so that's that. Just want to do is just go down here, select all this. Now, as I mentioned, this is in another layer, so that's why I don't care to select on top of that. Okay, so what you want to do is go to the original layer and then Control Shift J there. Alright, I'm just gonna call it back, and then this is going to be the sky, so I'm gonna name this sky. What I'm gonna do also is I'm gonna divide this the cable thingy. Now to add a selection, what you want to do is press Shift, and then the plus sign comes up, and then you can add another selection. If you don't use the Shift, it'll just unselect what you already selected, so you want to be careful with that. And if you want to remove a selection, press Alt, that brings up the negative sign, and then you can remove part of a selection. Control Shift J, and then those are the cable. I'm just gonna call it cable. Okay, we have our layers. Just organize them from the one that's at the very front is the one that should be first, and then whatever is at the back is what you should you know what, I think that this plant should be on top, because there are gonna be some plants that are gonna be in front of the thingy. That's gonna be in front. The iron thing is gonna be second. The road is gonna be yeah, underneath. To be honest with you, the road and the iron thing, it really doesn't matter in which order they're from, just as long as the plant is on top of both of them. To me, it doesn't really matter, so I'm just gonna leave it there. And then we have the back. You know what, this back, I feel like I should divide it in two. We have the back, this background here, and then we also have the mountains right at the very back. So now we have our mountains, and we have our, I'm just gonna call this back. Okay, so we've pretty much got our background organized and, you know, divided. Now this is something that you want to do first, always. Even if you're not making an animation, it's always good to organize your backgrounds. Now the first thing that we're gonna do now is gonna be not the fun part, but yeah, we're gonna get into the art part now. So the first thing that you want to do is taking your brush. Okay, now I have a wide variety of brushes. To be honest with you, just is like a regular default brush is okay. I will leave a link to some of the brushes that I use in the description. Yeah, the brushes that I have, they are the ones that I got over time from artists and from tutorials and stuff like that. And DeviantArt is actually a pretty good place to get brushes, because a lot of artists leave their brushes for you to download, so I do recommend that you go check it out. Just taking your brush, it doesn't really matter, okay? To be honest with you, you can just use the default brush. It doesn't really matter. I'm gonna start with this iron thingy, okay? So what you're gonna do is click the transparency layer, and what this does is that what you paint, it only affects that layer. It doesn't affect anything other than what's in the layer. So it's very helpful if you do not want to like affect anything that is not the actual thing. So what you want to do is just pretty much straight up pick the colors, okay? Now what you want to do is just remove the details, okay? Because yeah, photos are very realistic and there's a lot of excessive details, and if you want to turn something into an anime style, you want to tone down the details a little bit. So what you want to do is just pick the colors and just paint over it. That's what I normally do. Now this part of the process, you do not have to worry about the shading and stuff like that. You just want to paint over every unnecessary detail that is in the photo. That's pretty much all I do for now. And now this part is pretty tasking. I mean, I do enjoy this part a lot of the times, but yeah, sometimes it can be a little excessive because you have to be on top of it for so long. Just pick the colors. Again, you do not have to worry about the lighting and stuff like that. All you want to do is just remove details. We're going to worry about the lighting later, and it's pretty easy to add shading, especially digitally, after you've repainted everything. What I'm going to do is in time-lapse, I'm just going to finish off this iron thing. I'm not going to make you guys stay here and watch me repaint this entire thing. So in time-lapse, I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to come back, and then we're going to continue with the rest of the drawing. Alright guys, so yeah, I'm sorry, okay, I kind of forgot to record the screen at the beginning process of the plant. Yeah, I was pretty much just talking to the air. The thing that I was talking about is that I pretty much used the exact same method, okay? I just pretty much color picked the plants, and then I just made random shapes and colors and stuff like that until something comes up, but keeping in mind that obviously they're gonna have to be plants. Yeah, I just winged it, okay? There's no actual plan here. I just color picked what was the plants, and then I just made random like splatters of colors until something came up. But that's pretty much the method that I went with this. Okay, and one thing that I also mentioned that I forgot to record was that contrast is pretty important. Okay, so I started with a pretty dark color first, just so it adds depth to the entire thing. Yeah, it's not the best. I do admit that it's not 100% good, but yeah, this is kind of like me showing the method in which I go about making this sort of illustrations. Also, okay, another thing that I wanted to mention is that color variation is also important. So you want to add a little bit of, you know, not the same tone of color. So as you can see here, this green and this green, they're pretty different, okay? Or I don't know, just have a little bit of variation. You know what? One thing that I also want to do is kind of add just an entirely different sort of color, just to add a little bit of variation, like a very saturated color, kind of maybe like some flowers or stuff like that. Just add a little bit, you know, just randomly add them in there, which adds a lot, to be honest. You can also add different sort of colors. You don't have to add that. I mean, flowers, there are a lot of different colors and stuff. You can add a little bit of, yeah, just stuff like that, you know. Also, what I wanted to say is that you want to cover as much as possible the actual photo. You do not want the details from the photo. You want to add details by yourself. So you first of all just splatter the entire thing with color, and then afterward you can, you know, add the details on your own. So yeah, I'm just gonna add some flowers here, just randomly place them. What you also want to think about is the depth, okay, and also work with the shading and stuff like that. Anything that's more inside, I guess, should be a little bit darker. Stuff like that is what you want to have to like keep in mind. Like for example, like just subtly add some shading to it so that it doesn't stand out too much. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying, but yeah, just softly add some shading to it to add some depth, you know, so that everything doesn't look too stood out, I guess. Now you want to be very subtle with it. You do not want to, yeah, just softly add some shading here. So as you can see here, this flower right here stands out a lot more now, stuff like that. So everything is not similar in terms of value. The one that's more outside is the one that should have the brightest value. So the road, I also forgot to record it, but it's pretty simple. Okay, I just color picked the road and then added a little bit more variation. Like this was the original color, I think, and then I went with a little bit brighter value and then just tried to add a little bit of, whoops. Okay, you see that's one thing that I'm talking about. I'm not in the actual layer. You want to go to another layer. You want to be very, like, you want to be focusing a lot when you're making digital art, because you can really mess up, but you don't want to make it too detailed like the actual photo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to group all of this so we can see the before and after. See? That's looking better. You can be as detailed as you want to. Okay, if you want to, you can add a lot of detail to the plants. It really depends on you. Now, if we are making something for like a feature film or something, you wanna, you wanna be very detailed with everything, and you wanna, make sure every highlight is precise and every, detail is good. But since this is just for a YouTube video, I mean, this is nothing like, I think this is pretty good. I also do like kind of like a not so detailed style, so it'll add a little bit of artistic style to it. So I do like a little bit of roughness in it and not everything being super perfect and stuff like that. Anyways, that's about it. I'm gonna add more like highlights and stuff like that later, but for now we're not really focusing on the lighting. For now we're just repainting it and making it look like an anime. First, before I get into the background here at the very back, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a little bit of a gradient to the sky. It will help us add in a little bit of mood to the entire illustration. I'm going to pick in like a sunsetty color. I'm gonna pick in the gradient tool and then I'm just gonna grade it. Okay, nope, that's bad. Okay, all you want to do is go to the lock layer, and now we can do it. There you go. All right, so that's kind of a, now I usually like my background to be a sunset background, okay, because I feel like it adds a lot, and I mean a lot, when it comes to the mood, and I love sunsets so much. So whenever I make a background, I usually make it a sunset because I love it so much. But that's just me. If you don't want a sunset, you can just go with day, I guess. It really depends on you. Yeah, I'm gonna work on the sky just a little bit before we get into the actual background. I'm just gonna pick a regular general soft brush, and then I'm just gonna add a little bit of redness, I guess you'd call it, to the sky, like here or something. So that's kind of what I want to achieve there. Okay, now the purple, I feel it's a little too much. I'm gonna go to the blue, go a little bit darker blue, and then I'm just gonna there, something like, maybe like that. I don't know, maybe not. You know what, I'm just gonna Control Z, a little bit darker purple perhaps, something like that. Now this adds to the mood. Okay, that's why I decided to go to the sky about now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start now. I'm gonna work on the background. As I mentioned, I do like this tree right here. You know what, I'm gonna try to work on this. I think I selected it wrong. As for the mountains, you know what, this part shouldn't exist. This part right here shouldn't exist for the mountains. It should be, whoopsie, that was a mistake. I'm going to take the soft brush and then paint over that and see if we can do it. Oh, by the way, the sky should be at the very bottom. I have no idea why I didn't do that. Since the sky is at the thing that's at the very back, you want to have it at the very bottom. Anyway, I'm just going to repaint this since, yeah, there. It's like it never happened. As for this, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add in a dark layer of just shading and then work our way up to the highlights. Now, you do not have to have a specific brush for this, but if you have like a leaf type brush, could be very helpful. And then little by little start to add highlights. As for the highlight, you want to work your way up to it. You don't want to add pretty harsh highlights at the very beginning. You want to work your way up to it. Okay, so I added a nice layer of highlight there. What you want to do now is work your way up to a brighter highlight. Now, this brush I do not like for this, so I'm going to go with just a straight up regular default brush, okay? And then just work your way up. Now, some people do not like using the transfer for this kind of thing, like to go straight up hard brush. Personally, I don't mind it. I really like it. The transparency, the style that it gives, I really do like it. Really depends on you, to be honest. Go up a little bit more and then just change the hue a little bit, just so that it's not, you know, the same. And then just add more highlights, and that kind of gives depth to the entire tree. Anyway, yeah, it's not the best tree, but yeah, I think you get the idea. There's no perfect tree. But yeah, that's what I keep telling myself to make myself feel better. I'm just gonna remove all this, some like that. Now I think I do have a grass brush. I have leaf brush, trees. I actually had a tree brush. To be honest with you, I have way too many brushes and I don't even know which what I have. But yeah, this could be useful for this tree, for example. Let's see if we can add some variations, make things a little bit more interesting, I guess. Now, one problem that I have with this kind of brushes is that it looks too repetitive. You know what? I'm gonna go to the mountains. Actually, I'm gonna use a regular brush. I'm going to remove this part because I feel this is the mountains part. I'm actually gonna remove all this. See, now these are little adjustments that you do as you're doing the entire thing, because this is not something that I would have thought as I was actually selecting the entire thing, because you know, you see what works, what doesn't work, stuff like that. So actually I feel like the colors of the mountains are too dark. I just press Ctrl U and then just light it up, kind of like that, and then adding a different hue there. So yeah, it's more purple than it is blue. If you want to as well, you can add in highlights to the mountains, so it doesn't just look like a flat, you know. Now, a mix of the actual default brush and the tree brush are not a good mix. It's something that I'm just figuring out right now, to be honest. So you want to stick with one. It's either the tree brush or the default brush. I mean, the tree brush could look good if you use it properly. Yeah, to be honest, I don't really like that look. I'm probably gonna redo it. I'm gonna redo that. Make a little wobbly shape. You know what? I'm actually gonna do the tree in a separate layer so that yeah, things can be a little bit organized. Okay, first I'm gonna organize this. I'm gonna put one tree there, and I'm gonna put another tree maybe here, and then I don't know, maybe one last tree at the very, like at a distance or something. Okay, so this is kind of what I've come down to when it comes to the composition. Now, one thing that you want to keep in mind is that whatever is furthest away from us should be a lot brighter than what is in front of us. So for example, I feel like this tree is a little bit further away from us than this one, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one and I'm going to lighten it up a little bit so that the darkest value should be brighter, and then this one that is way further away from it in the distance will be a little bit brighter, something like that. And that also works with the ground itself. So I'm going to divide this ground actually in 3 parts. This is going to be the closest land thingy that we have here. You know what? I'm gonna work my way upwards, okay? The furthest land from us should be brighter. Yep, I worked on the wrong layer again. Crap. Kind of like that. And then this one right here should be a little bit darker, and then this one right here should be the darkest. So we've got 3 lands kind of divided, each one for each tree. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna work on the grass. Now, it would be helpful if you actually had a grass brush, but since I don't have it, I'm just gonna manually add every single strand of grass, okay? And since I've already started my landscape that way, I mean, using the not a very custom brush for each thing, you want your landscape to be consistent, you know. Don't use very drastically different brushes for each thing, because that yeah, that just spoils the landscape, like you saw here with this tree here. So I'm just gonna quickly finish this off in time lapse, and then I'll probably do the clouds in real time, because I don't know, some people might be interested in the clouds. So yeah, I will probably do that in real time a little bit and explain my method. It's pretty similar to making trees, to be honest. It's not all that different. The method is pretty much the same. So anyway, I'm gonna finish this off in time lapse and then pretty much come back and then continue with the rest of the journey. Alright, so I have done a little bit. Yeah, it's not the most polished illustration, and yeah, I did not organize the layers the way that I wanted. What I would advise you, because I didn't have this original plan in my head first, I kind of winged it as I was going along. So what I would advise you to do, since I divided this background here in 3 parts, like this ground, the middle ground, and the furthest ground, I would advise you to divide them in layers. Okay, I did not do that because I did not have it in my head while I was doing it, so it was a little mess. So everything is 1 layer for me. Okay, but if you're looking to animate it, I would advise you to actually like plan it out first, so you know what you're actually dividing before you actually do it, because when you start getting into it and you have this weird mix of layers, it gets messy sometimes. So I would advise you to organize it first. As you can see here, I pretty much have gotten a little bit of work done. You know, it's not the most polished, but you know, it's enough to kind of get the idea across on how I would normally repaint a background. Yeah, okay, so for the mountains here, as you can see here, it's pretty light. If you want to, it doesn't have to be too light. Since it's pretty far back, it's pretty light, but what you want to do is like maybe like add a little bit of a gradient sometimes. If you want to make the top a little bit darker than the bottom, because the bottom part is pretty misty, stuff like that. So what you want to do is, you know, go with lock in the layer, only the mountains, and then make a little bit of a gradient at the very top. Now if you don't want to, you don't have to, okay, but this is kind of a thing that I thought could be useful for a lot of people, because I feel it adds a really cool effect, something like that, as you can see there. Oh, that's about it. Yeah, as you can see here, this tree is not the most rendered. Yeah, it could use a little bit of work. Now another thing that I probably should mention is that, as you can see here, the foreground is pretty lit up. Okay, I'm gonna add a layer of shade afterward. That's what I was talking in the beginning. Now you shouldn't worry about the shading at the very beginning as you're repainting the entire thing. I got carried away a little bit as I was making the middle ground here, because I had in mind already that I was gonna make a sunset. But if you are making a landscape that you wanna change the lighting like easily, what you want to do is repaint the entire thing, not worrying about the lighting, and then add a layer of shading with multiply or overlay or whatever you're into so the lighting can easily be manipulated, so you don't have to repaint the entire thing to make a different sort of like a noon or something. The lighting is totally different, you don't have to repaint the entire thing again. So that's a little tip that I would give you if you're into it, so that it's easier. But since I had in mind already that I was gonna make a sunset, so yeah, I did get carried away with the lighting effect here in the middle. But yeah, just something that I thought I would mention. Anywho, I'm gonna keep retouching this a little bit, and we're gonna go right into the clouds, because I know a lot of people are interested in the clouds and how to make clouds. Now for me personally, I really love making clouds. It's not the most complicated thing, pretty similar to how I normally make trees, but it's a little bit fluffier and, you know, not as many like little sections, I guess, because it's a huge thing, and it's a huge thing. I feel like is a good idea to cut the image a little bit, because I feel it's a lot of sky. If you want a lot of sky, I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't mind having a lot of sky, but I just felt like the sky is just a little, yeah, it's a little too much. So I'm gonna adding another layer for the clouds. I'm gonna pick this color here and try to make like a dark, somewhat unsaturated color. There's a lot of different ways to make clouds, and clouds, they vary depending on the lighting, depending on everything. So there's no one way of making clouds. What I would advise you to do is kind of have a whole bunch of references of clouds stacked up, so you kind of, you know, get an idea of how clouds normally work, I guess. And I mean, the colors of clouds are pretty drastically different depending on time of day and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm just gonna wing it. Now I really love making clouds because clouds are, for me personally, are simple to make. And you can just go crazy with it, and there's no one rule of making clouds, because clouds are so randomly made that you can pretty much get away with a lot of randomness, I guess. I'm gonna make a layer of clouds here at the very bottom, pretty light, and then work our way up to darker clouds at the very top, a little bit darker, some like that. First, what I'm doing right now is just roughly placing how the clouds are going to be. I'm just kind of like organizing the composition of how the clouds are. The clouds that I'm going to be making here are pretty long cloud stretch clouds. If that's the kind of clouds you want to make, you can do it. But there are also clouds that are kind of, rather than long, they're pretty high, like height wise, they're pretty tall. So those are also another type of cloud that you can make. Yeah, also another thing that you want to keep in mind is that clouds, they have different variations of colors and stuff like that. Just because it's a sunset doesn't mean that the clouds color has to be like a warm color. You can also put in some cold in the clouds and stuff like that. You can literally get away with a lot of things when it comes to clouds. It generates really random colors sometimes. Also, you want to keep in mind that they're also tiny clouds, okay? Very like tiny little clouds. So what I would advise you to do is not get carried away with it. Sometimes it gets oversaturated with clouds. That's not what you want to do. You want the right amount of clouds. I mean, it really depends on if you want there to be a lot of clouds. That depends on you. But for the most part, don't oversaturate it with clouds. And also you want to variate, okay, between dark and light clouds, okay? Also very important, not just make one sort of dark cloud for every single thing, you know? There are also very super light clouds where they're super transparent and the sun hits it, yeah, pretty well. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that clouds, just like objects, they have a lighter side and a darker side. So depending on where the sun is will depend on where the highlight is going to be. Let's say since it's a sunset, the highlights of the clouds are going to be at the very bottom, and in contrast of that, the dark side of the clouds are going to be at the very top. And it really depends on how intense you want it to be. If you want it to be like an intense sunset, you can make a super saturated red. I actually have a wide variety of cloud brushes, which I should probably use, since most of you are going to use the default brush anyway. I'll probably just use it. And I'm going to make it a little bit cold, like a cold color for the shade. Make the sky a little bit darker. It really depends on the effect that you want to go with. If you want to like an intense sunset, you could go with darker sky. I think something like that is actually pretty good. And then we just continue with the clouds. All right, so I've pretty much explained my process. So what I'm gonna do now is in time lapse, I'm gonna finish off the clouds. Okay, and then after I'm done with the clouds, we'll add like effects and glows and stuff like that. I'll also do that in real time, don't worry. So let's get right into it. So I'm pretty much done with the clouds. Okay, you can add in as much detail as you want. Okay, you can spend forever on the clouds. Now, this is still not finished. Okay, we still have the grand part still to come, and that is adding the shades and the highlights. Now, as you can see here, the first plane is pretty bright. So what I want to do is add in a layer of shade. I pretty much just like to have one entire layer because yeah, I can't be bothered to like, you know, separate each layer for each thing. I just can't be bothered at this point of the drawing. If I really want to be precise about everything, I would divide everything, but anyways, I picked a very dark purple, and then I'm gonna go to linear burn, and I'm going to go down to the opacity, maybe make it 50. Let's see, 50 more or less. If it's not a super harsh sunset, what you can do is reduce the opacity. But since the sunset is pretty harsh, the shades are gonna be pretty dark. I'm actually going to reduce it. Increase it. Maybe to like 53 or something. I don't know. Anyway, that's pretty much the entire layer of shading, to be honest. If you want to, you can also add it here, but I feel like it's unnecessary. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. Now, what we're gonna do is actually add in the highlights, which is probably the most interesting part, and also the glow. I'm also gonna make another layer specifically for glow, so I'm just gonna call it glow first. I'm gonna add a little bit of glow here, like in the horizon, and I'm gonna pick like a golden color, add a little bit of glow there, just like that. Now, You could go to, what do you call it, like color dodge, I think it was, and then pick, what was it, like something like that, and then whoops, nope. Yeah, I don't use color dodge all that often. Yeah, I'm not used to it, and I don't like using it. I don't know why, but yeah, since some people use it, we could try it out, I guess. Yeah, the color dodge is something that you shouldn't use too much of because it can get excessive. It's pretty easy to overdo it with the color dodge, so I'm just gonna, the sun is gonna be right about there. Yep, I think it's way too much. To be honest with you, I don't really like the effect of the color dodge. I just like to straight up pick up a bright color and then just use it. Okay, so I'm gonna add in another layer for highlights, and I'm gonna put it on top of the shades. As you can see here, I'm just adding highlights to pretty much all the elements. I think I picked the wrong color. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick a more golden color, something like that. And yeah, I think that's about better. And also this part, you wanna try your best not to overdo it because it's pretty easy to overdo it. Yeah, something like that is good. I'm gonna add in a little bit here at the top, just where the parts where it's hitting the most sun, that's where I'm gonna add in the most highlights. So with this part, I'm gonna do the exact same thing. Now if you want to, you can also do some highlights on the grass here. The smart thing to do would be to separate the layers of each individual highlight, but you know, goody. We're pretty much done with that. You can add some highlights in the water, the reflection and stuff and whatnot. That's about it. What I'm gonna do now is add some highlights to this foreground. What I'm gonna do is add in highlights to this thing here. What I feel like I should do also is adding highlights to this plants right here to bring the plants to life, I guess you could say. Alright, so I'm pretty much done with the highlights. I mean, you can go forever with it, to be honest. So we have the glow with the color dodge, but what I want to do now is add another glow, call it maybe glow 2 maybe, where we actually glow the objects. For example, here, what I want is like a little glow here, something like that, you know? So you want to do that with pretty much the entire drawing. Now this is something also that you do not want to overdo because yeah, it's a pretty powerful thing because it adds a lot, personally I feel like. So I'm just gonna add some tiny little like glows in each thing. So I'm just gonna wing in how the glows are gonna hit it. Again, you do not want to overdo it because it's pretty simple to overdo this, but you just want to add glows to a lot of the parts in the illustration. And I'm gonna add glow to the trees, yeah, something like that. You know what, I'm gonna reduce the opacity of the glow 60%. But that's about it. Oh gosh, we are done. I mean, I could go longer, to be honest. This is a pretty simple landscape. It's not too complicated, so we are pretty much, wait, I did not add glow to this, to the wire thingy there. So pretty much done. Now I'm thinking of repainting this background, okay, using this exact same method. If you guys want me to, let me know, okay, just let me know down in the comments below. It's pretty cool. I really like the Japanese aesthetic, so I thought I would maybe repaint it. If you guys want to see me repaint this, let me know. Yeah, I didn't get into animating backgrounds, okay, but I mean, it's pretty easy. As I mentioned, since you already have each individual element separated in layers, all you have to do is pretty much move them around, okay? And that's pretty much it, okay? Use pretty much common sense. That's how I did it. I mean, I didn't follow any specific tutorials on how to do it. But animating backgrounds, pretty easy. It's not like animating characters, which is pretty difficult and you have to, you know, draw every single frame. This one it's pretty easy to do, like in Final Cut or Premiere or something, like a super easy video editing program. I didn't get into animation in this video because it's probably a super long ass video already. So I probably will leave it for another video. Let me know what you guys think. As I mentioned, I picked a very simple sort of landscape so that you kind of understand the gist of it, and my method of working when it comes to repainting. I could actually like crop this out because I feel like there's maybe a little too much sky. It drifts the focus a little bit away from this part right here, which I feel like is a big part of it. I think it's actually a lot better than all of this right here, so I do want to focus a little bit more on this side. So this is kind of the aspect ratio I would go with. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that big thumbs up, guys. It helps me a ton to know that you guys are liking the videos. And if you want to see more background repaints, just follow me on my socials, okay? I make a lot of background art, a lot of background repaints. I've already made a ton already on my Instagram, so if you want to check them out, I always leave a link in the description, or just search jolly.arts on Instagram. And that is pretty much it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you find it helpful, share it with your friends. Thank you all for liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Remember to do what you love, never stop drawing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.